Next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna hire an administrative assistant. Now, this person can be a VA. This administrative assistant is gonna do all of your $5, $10 an hour tasks. They're going to export lead lists. They can import your properties into the MLS or in the softwares once you possibly get a listing. Get this person to manage your email. This person can manage your CRM system, making sure that everyone's getting responses, right? All the tasks that maybe you missed, you can move them to the next day, right? Making sure that every single seller and every single buyer is on a campaign of some sort, right? You're going to want to make sure this person's kind of handling a lot of the administrative tasks that you can pay somebody $5 or $10 an hour. Second thing you're also going to want to do is that after you make your first $100 grand, you're going to want to make sure you get a bookkeeper. Go to your accountant, ask if they do bookkeeping services, and just pay them the money they ask for. They're gonna handle your books. That means every single dollar that comes in and every single dollar that goes out, they're gonna be tracking it. And you wanna be able to meet with them once a quarter to review it. And yeah, you're gonna pay money to do it, but guess what? It's gonna save your butt when you're dealing with taxes. It's gonna save your butt when you're trying to understand how a business works. You're gonna wanna make sure somebody's overlooking your books and it's not just you. And during that regimented schedule, you're also gonna wanna make sure you do not go on appointments until like 2 o'clock or later in the day, because the entire morning and early afternoon is gonna be focused on doing the work that actually gets you paid. And of course, sometimes you have to go meet a client, of course, right? I get that, right? Or meeting somebody face-to-face for any type of meeting, coffee meetings, networking, whatever. But you don't go do that at 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't take meetings until after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, and the last thing that I want you to focus on when you're trying to go from 100 to several hundred grand a year is going to be also one hour meeting with yourself, by yourself, every single week. Now that meeting is gonna be incredibly important. It's called CEO time. That CEO time is gonna give you time to work on the business, not in the business, making your calls and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, it's gonna be on the business. You're gonna be game planning. How are we doing? How many leads did we generate last month, last quarter, last year? How many contracts did we sign last month, last quarter, last year? How, you're gonna look through all your metrics. How many calls, how many emails went out, how many views on all your social media platforms. You're gonna look at everything, every metric's important. You're gonna review it all. Am I growing? Is the business growing? Or are we shrinking? Right? Are we dying? And you're gonna look at every single metric every single week. You're gonna do that for an hour. Now let's talk about the final piece. Let's say now you're making several $100 grand a year, $300,000 to $500,000 a year, and you're looking to take that to $1 million plus. Okay, now there's gonna be a few things you're gonna have to work on, and it's talk about team building. It's important to realize that in the commercial real estate world, of course, can you make 7 figures a little bit easier than the residential world because of the price ranges and the commission sizes? Sure. However, the vast majority of people who make net, in order to get there, you're probably gonna have to do several $1 million in gross income. In order to do several $1 million a year consistently, or again, when you're doing $1 million a year in net, let's just call it $2 million minimum gross, that's $500,000 in income per quarter. So if you're making $500,000 right now, that's 4 times what you're making right now, which is why building a team is very, very lucrative. The first thing we'll talk about is, how is your team structured today? Do you have an administrative assistant? Do you have 1 VA, 2 VAs? What does your team look like today? And assessing and doing something called an org chart. And on a piece of paper, you just write out at the very top, do a little circle and put your name. I would put an H for me, right, for Henry. And then you're gonna wanna build out a team. Like, what does your team actually need to look like in order to do the volume necessary to net $1 million? To start, you need to be looking at least a $2 million gross revenue number. $2 million gross is probably gonna give you bottom line somewhere around $1 million. And maybe you can do this with doing maybe $1.5 million, but you're probably gonna have to do substantially over $1 million. And just keep that in mind that you're not just grossing $1 million here. We're talking about how to net $1 million, which is why you need to build a team. You're gonna look at your org chart. Say, well, I'm gonna need administrative support, I'm gonna need sales support, and I'm gonna need some type of marketing support. And every single one of those arms, those departments, right, are very, very important. So administrative, let's talk about this. Yeah, you can start with a VA, but you're probably gonna end with a VA. When you're netting $1 million plus, you're probably gonna have some type of full-time staff that are working with you. Now, obviously, you can do maybe 10 to 15 transactions a year without full-time transactional support. I would recommend it still, because you can probably get somebody for $45,000 a year. And if you're doing 8 to 10 or 12 or 15 transactions a year, where each deal is $100,000 or several $100,000 a year, or each deal is several $100,000 or more individually of each deal, right? So you can do that, and you can probably have 1 full-time support staff, administrative assistant. And I did that for quite some time, where you can have 1 full-time employee, and that individual can support you until you're doing millions of dollars for the most part, okay? Now, what's important to realize that this administrative task, this administrative assistant or transaction support, you're gonna have this individual, but then I would also recommend probably having 2 or 3 VAs handling all the little things. So this person can handle like all of the very important stuff that's client facing, making sure they're coordinating everything with the attorneys and with the seller and the buyer, making sure all that's being handled. They can do a lot of client facing stuff, and even a lot of the emails that individual might be sending out can be done by VAs. What I realized is that VAs have really excelled my business in a lot of different ways, because you're not overpaying, which means a lot more profit comes down to your bottom line, which means you can grow faster because you can hire more people. But it's also, keep in mind that like I used to have 11 full-time support staff, tens and tens of thousands of dollars in payroll a month. And I'm realizing like I was just paying out a bunch of money because like, it was just like an ego thing, and I didn't need that. And I got thankfully, really dumbed down my team where like we don't have anywhere near, like it was nearly a $50,000 a month in payroll, where you just don't need that. So what I found is that the VAs are really great for, administrative and transactional support that is not the client-facing piece, right? Like not on the phone specifically, and I don't do that. You can have one full-time transaction coordinator who's supported by 2 or 3 different VAs, but I also would look at this as you can have a transaction coordinator and you're going to have an executive assistant. This executive assistant is going to be someone who's just focused on you, does your personal email,